I'm here to listen. Why am I walking on this way?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Muse's AT Podcast, where you can relive my epic journey with me. This is Muse, and what follows is my Appalachian Trail story. Today's episode covers Monday, June 2nd, 2025, or as I titled it in the last episode, Muse's Musings from a Bus Station. And we'll get over to the musings in just a moment. Before I go there, though, I want to just call attention to it in case you're detecting it. A little bit of a different sonic profile, and maybe you're picking up on it, than what I would have in my home studio. And I'll do my best to master that so it's not bad different, but it's still going to be different. I'm actually on the road. I am in a hotel room in New Jersey right now. As I had mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I started a finance consulting business that has been very exciting. It has taken me to a couple different places, and right now I am in a town called Morristown, New Jersey. And that's kind of a big part of the continuation of this Appalachian Trail story. My AT thru hike is very much a part of my post-trail experience, even as much as it might seem like a stretch, my finance consulting business, to the point that it's even helped me reconnect with old colleagues and possibly even to some degree led to some of the work that I've been doing. So that's pretty cool. All right, back to the musings from a bus station. The entry that follows is going to be just a little bit dizzying. So here's how I'll just kind of lay it out here. The online journal was written, of course, in 2025. You're going to hear a journal entry written in 2025 that refers back to a journal that was written in 2023. The 2023 journal, in turn, refers back to a journal that was written in 2020. So it could get a little bit confusing, hopefully not too much. I do think this is a very important entry, though, and the entry itself is going to kind of step out of the narrative. You're not going to get too much of me telling you what happened in this day on this entry. It's going to kind of go into the reasons why I took on this adventure in the first place. And it also is going to show some development over the pre-hike time. Because as you know, 7-year pre-hike period, you're going to get a snapshot at 2020 and 2023 that are both in that period. So you get a little bit of a sense of the evolution as we go along here too. So just kind of setting things up. And to keep things straight, I am going to do something abnormal during the entries and break in with a little bit of editorial just to make sure that we're staying on track. All right, let's go ahead and do today's haiku. This one is from June 3rd, 2025. A whole other world, kind, friendly, inexpensive, and cheering you on. And we have only one new entry in our trail glossary today. In the commentary, I'm going to mention just in passing the concept of hiker hunger. Now, when you're out there hiking all day, day after day, you end up racking up a huge caloric deficit. And at some point, your body just absolutely makes you make up for that. And that's what really hiker hunger is. We'll actually get into exactly how that looks and everything in kind of a future episode, but it does come up today, and so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. It can be absolutely epic what a hiker can put away. June 2nd, 2025. Why I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail. Pre-trail. Looking at what would have been a short entry, as today's travel plans are pretty simple, I write from the bus station in Bangor, awaiting our bus to Medway. It will be about an hour trip. In Medway, we'll hop on the shuttle for the Appalachian Trail Hostel in Millinocket, where we'll spend the next 2 nights. We've got a busy day tomorrow in Millinocket, but I'll cover that in tomorrow's entry. As I alluded to in a recent post, I think it's important to communicate the purpose of this trek. To do that, I'll refer to a post in my physical journal from July 2023. It starts out by rewriting an entry from 3 years prior in yet another journal, and then restating those reasons for a 2023 update. Okay, I know I'm not the most normal of people, but I'm sure we all figured that out by now. Smiley face. Anyway, the excerpt. Okay, here's where I'm going to jump in and just make sure we stay on track. When I say the excerpt, we're taking an excerpt from my 2023 entry, which was a lengthier journal entry, even beyond what I included last year, so you won't hear that in its entirety. However, the excerpt from 2023 starts with the words, "That journal entry looks like this," and so immediately jumps into the entry from 2020, which is just the earlier version of the list. When you hear the words, now 3 years later, we're back in 2023, which I think is pretty well signaled, but since we're giving clarity, may as well make sure we're giving clarity, right? As we then get further in, you'll catch on to some editorial parentheticals that I wrote into the text in 2025. By the time we get there, things are getting a little more clear and obvious, so let's go ahead and move back into the entry. That journal entry looks like this. July 19th, 2020. Reasons to hike the Appalachian Trail. 1. To find God. 2. To discern my path and purpose. 3. To do something awesome with Carrie. 4. To reset habits. 5. To gain benefits while still young enough to make an impact. Editor's note. Sorry to my more chronologically advanced friends. I guess my 2020 self was a bit of an ageist. 6. To prove to the kids that it is important to dream and to achieve. 7. To embrace simplicity. 8. To be more centered. Now, 3 years later, we're still in the 2023 entry. Some of the reasons will have shifted a little. The first and most obvious might be the with Carrie part. In my original conception, Carrie and I would set off on the trail in the year 2026, 8 years after I made my Taco Bell announcement. When I first mentioned to my family that I wanted to do this back in June of 2018 in Taco Bell. Smiley face. Haley would be out of school and could look after our affairs while Evan would be enjoying his sophomore year in college. By the end of that conversation, the kids were coming too, Ev taking a break from school to do it, and yet in 2020 I'd forgotten that? I don't know. Anyway. Now, 3 years later, the plan has changed a bit. Haley, between undergrad and grad school, will be joining me while Carrie, who has since gone back to work, will hold down the fort. Evan at this point, and understandably so, just can't commit. The new plan places the year at 2025, less than 2 years out from this writing. Despite the change in plans, I don't think I would change reason number 3. I will be doing something awesome and very much with Carrie. Carrie has been the force that has kept this from being a one-off crazy idea and turned it into a plan on the brink of reality. The reason I was listing reasons in the first place was at the suggestion of a book Carrie bought me. Today, I'm going to rewrite the list of reasons. Most are very similar, but there are notable changes. Reasons to hike the trail. 1. To walk with God in the beauty and wonder of His creation, to deepen my relationship with Him. 2. To discern my path and purpose and to define the passions that I will take into the second half of my life. 3. To do something awesome with Carrie and the kids. 4. To develop lasting habits that connect me with God, nature, and myself. 5. To understand where I will go forward and make a real impact in this world in my lifetime, and to do something that will have a positive impact on my descendants for generations. 6. To show to all I may meet the value of dreaming big. 7. To embrace simplicity. 8. To be more centered. Okay, we're back in 2025. I know that was a lot, but that's why I'm hiking and a bit about how this dream had evolved since 2018. I hope you enjoyed knowing what this is all about. Thank you to all who have in any way, and there are many different ways and many of you, gotten me here. Hey everyone. This is the part of the episode between the entry and the commentary, where as the podcast develops, I'll drop in an ad or two to get the bills paid. Nothing too intrusive, hopefully, and maybe if we're lucky, we'll pick up some trail-related sponsors. At this point, though, I thought I'd write an ad of my own and read it out. What I'm selling today is simply a plea to get in touch with me. I'll say it in the body of some of the episodes, but probably sometimes I won't. But I really do want to connect. Not only would I love feedback, truly, and am itching to field a question or two, but I also would love to hear your trail stories. This podcast is my way, post-trail, of connecting back with the AT community. Whether you're reliving past glory like I am on this show, prepping for an upcoming hike, or maybe you're on the trail here in 2026, or maybe you're just someone who likes hiking content or in particular the Appalachian Trail, whatever brings you here, I'd love to get to know you. So reach out on Instagram by following Muse Hikes, or email me at museatpodcast@gmail.com. Or another cool way to get in touch, and I'll start getting back to checking this regularly, is to drop a note in my trail journal if you click through to that. The Trail Journal has pictures with each journal entry, and sometimes I'll refer directly to the picture in the entry as I read it out, so you might want to see that. And I'll also share some photos on that Instagram account as well. There are links to the Instagram profile, the email, and the Trail Journal in the show notes to each episode. Whichever way you decide to reach out, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the show. All right, I've got a few things that I want to do in this episode here today. And the first is that I do want to start out, before we even go into the entry, and there's a lot I want to say about the entry because I do, as I mentioned in the intro, I think this is a very important entry. But before we even go there, I want to fill in some of the narrative details that were, because of the nature of the entry, naturally left out of the entry. We had come in, and we didn't come in especially late, but we did come in especially tired on the evening of June 1st, into the Bangor Aviator Hotel, which is ironically the hotel that is adjacent to the airport that we were originally supposed to fly into. Just because the first has been such a long day, and because it didn't really matter to be early anyway, we went ahead and slept in, right? Now, sleeping in means a little bit of a different thing, I think. Maybe I'm stereotyping, I don't know, to a 47-year-old than it does to a 21-year-old. So that gave me a couple hours before Haley woke up, right? Anyway, so I go down to the lobby. I asked them for a late checkout because I just mentioned it didn't really matter to get out early. We catch the bus from Bangor to Medway at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was really quite late, so it made no sense to be in a hurry to get out of that hotel, right? Plus the hotel wasn't exactly bustling either. A hotel attached to a closed airport, as you can imagine, not exactly the busiest hotel. So I go down to the front desk. I ask for that late checkout. They made it where we didn't have to check out till noon. So that was cool. And then I actually had my physical journal. So I sat down to write, kind of just sitting there in a peaceful lobby, writing in my journal, probably for a good hour. And then the next thing I did was I called Evan. Evan was on a mini semester over in London. And it was actually his first day of classes. And just because of the time difference, he had already finished classes for the day. And so I had a great conversation with Evan. And that's actually something that we were talking about a little bit in the entries to last episode. So if you were wondering, after last episode, what were Evan's travels that I referred to twice in those entries, that's what it was. Evan ended up spending about a month over in England, the first 3 weeks in London and the last week in Sheffield. It was really cool. It was a great program for him. And something that's kind of cool to note is that 28 years earlier, way back in 1997, I spent a semester over in London myself. So this was a pretty cool thing to connect with Evan about. And especially as I was just kind of chilling at that moment, it was kind of cool to connect with him on the phone. I think it might be, no, it's not the only time I talked to him, but I didn't talk to him much while he was over there. As you can imagine, I was kind of in and out of service over the next couple of weeks. We did kind of keep up over WhatsApp. So that was the lobby, and it was great. It was a great just sort of respite. Haley and I rejoined together and sort of on with the adventure. So we wandered a little bit around the small area of Bangor that we were in. We actually started that by going through the airport, which was a little bit crazy because this airport was completely deserted and the automatic doors open right up for us. Footsteps are like echoing. We're kind of walking past the baggage claim carousels. It was just an interesting experience. Now, the reason I had chosen this hotel it had nothing to do with the airport. It was because it was the closest one to the bus station. The bus station was about a mile away. We ended up making a couple stops on the way there, McDonald's and Wendy's, which is kind of funny because we hadn't certainly earned any hiker hunger yet, but we were going ahead and leaning into that lifestyle. In the bus station, we will actually see for the first time, although we didn't even speak to them, but we will see Dan and Michaela. And we didn't speak to them, not because we're meaning to be unfriendly, but we're actually both writing. It was, Haley had started her trail journal on that day, and I was writing the entry that you just heard. We will end up over the next couple of weeks actually spending a lot of time with Dan and Michaela. They become notable people in the next couple segments of the story. And one of the things I want to do next episode is introduce people that are in the Appalachian Trail Hostel segment of this narrative. So we'll be doing that next episode. And so from there, we catch the bus, we head over to Medway. You know, one of the things that I'll talk about, even though that bus ride And one of the cool things about Maine, and I'm definitely going back to Maine at some point, right? But one of the cool things about Maine is that it's just so open and free. It's so sparsely populated that you're driving in the bus and all you're seeing is beautiful open countryside. We got over to Medway. The only thing I can even remember about Medway is just the gas station where we met the AT Hostel shuttle. Really, the town might not be much more than that. It's got to be a little more than that, I suppose, but I mean, there really was not, it was not obvious there was anything else around. So we, like I said, we meet the AT Hostel shuttle. It is driven by Loins of Arabia, one of the owners of the hostel. So we meet her, we go over to the AT Hostel, and we finish the day there at the AT Hostel. We get settled in, and that's really where the day ends up. So we'll pick up from there next episode. So now a bit about the entry, right? Why did I write an entry like this? Now, I had a list of reasons why I was hiking the Appalachian Trail. I'd had that list, and I'd even revised that list, right, at this point. Now I'm in 2025, and I'm wanting to communicate those reasons to my reading audience at the time. And I had mentioned my audience at the time. I had a good following with my trail journal, and I wasn't bashful about that either. I actually said to several people before trail and on trail that I had no problem shamelessly recruiting cheerleaders for my hike. So a lot of people were reading along, and I wanted to share what my reasons were. Now, a little bit about why I had that list in the first place, and that's going to go back to one of the books that I mentioned back in episode 2 when I was talking about my prep for the hike over several years. There were 2 books that I had read several times, and one of them was a book called Appalachian Trials by a gentleman by the name of Zach Davis. Appalachian Trials, although it got into some of the logistics of a hike, you can't really write a book about hiking the Appalachian Trail and not get into the logistics to some degree, right? But the focus of that book was really about the mindset and the emotional journey you're going to go on when you're through hiking the Appalachian Trail. It is, I say it's an absolute must read for preparing for the trail. And in a general sense, I'll kind of leave it right there. But specific to making a list, I want to kind of go into a little bit, give you a little synopsis of what the author was doing there. He actually has 3 lists that he would have you make. And his lists are titled like this: I am through hiking the Appalachian Trail because ... When I successfully through hike the Appalachian Trail, I will ... And if I give up on the Appalachian Trail, I will ... Now, the only one of those I ever actually documented was the very first. I am through hiking the Appalachian Trail because. The other 2, though, you can identify that I did some thinking around that too. And I had mentioned in an episode before, the one where I talked about post-trail life, that having a very clear vision of post-trail was absolutely crucial for me going into the hike. The reason that book gives for these lists is that at some point in your hike, you're going to ask yourself the question, why you're actually doing this. You're not going to be able to walk 2,200 miles and not have that ever enter your head. What Mr. Davis says in his book is you just want to have a ready answer for that when that question comes up. And then you're ready for it, and you just move past it, and you move on, right? I have a couple of observations for how this worked for me. First of all, I think it was absolutely critical. I think it was a crucial exercise. I'm really glad that I did this mental and emotional preparing for my through hike. So, my observations. First, even though I had a list of 8 reasons, people would ask me while I was on the trail, especially, why I was hiking. I didn't have a good, snappy answer for that question. So the one thing, and honestly, I might be doing Appalachian Trials and Mr. Davis a little bit of a disservice because this might even be in there. It's been a little while since I've read it. But the thing that I would add to making a list of reasons is boil that list down to the reason. Do a little bit of work on that because you're not only answering the question for the people who ask, you're answering that question for yourself. The other observation because I'm answering the question, did this work for me? I have to kind of throw myself under the bus a little bit. My follow through was not great. For somebody who wrote out the list, revised the list, and saw it as an absolutely crucial thing to do, you think that guy would look at the list. And I really had no excuse. The list was in my physical journal that I carried all the way to Springer. If I had it to do over again, rereading my list would have made it either into my morning routine or my nighttime routine as a daily activity. That said, just having done the work was huge for me. I just think I would have gotten that much more out of it had I had that follow through and actually read the list. Okay, as we're talking about Appalachian Trials, there is somebody I've got to give a little bit of shout out to. I don't know for sure absolutely if she's listening, but somebody who was important to my hike, because Zach Davis, the author of Appalachian Trials, basically more or less introduced me to this person, and that is Miss Janet. And she ends up being the one person I went onto the trail looking forward to meeting, because I had read about her in Appalachian Trials. I had looked up a YouTube, and I actually just, in preparing for this episode, looked up the YouTube video again, Zach Davis interviewing Miss Janet, and that was actually 14 years ago now. So I guess we're talking 2012 that this interview took place, and I just knew she was going to be great. So I actually remember talking to Bounce about that in Maine when I was hiking with him, that I wanted to meet Miss Janet, and he's like, "You're going to meet Miss Janet. Don't even worry about that." It was like a foregone conclusion. And it was later on, when hiking with Silly Putty and Foggy Froggy and Timber, that we got in touch with Miss Janet. She took us all under her wing, all 7 of us. She was instrumental in getting the 4 of us, together with the other 3, Utah, Ratatouille, Marco Polo, so that we all got to spend Thanksgiving together. So I remain grateful to Miss Janet, and I just think it's really cool that I ended up meeting her, and she ended up being really a significant part of my hike. And of course, we'll talk about her again when we get to Tennessee, when all that stuff took place, but that's not going to be for at least a year out here. The last thing that I want to do here in this episode is to talk about what the plan was from here. Because you guys know I drafted the plan. I talked about that actually in the second entry, so it would be the first entry in the second episode, the second entry you guys ever heard, that I had drafted the plan of the first few days just to kind of make sure everything was going smoothly and everything. There were a couple different changes in that plan. As you know, for instance, we were supposed to fly into Bangor on the 2nd. We flew into Portland on the 1st. Not a real consequence to that plan, except that we got to chill out even more on the 2nd because we weren't flying in and catching this bus. We were waking up there and catching the bus. And then from there, the plan was AT Hostel on the nights of the 2nd and the 3rd, because Haley and I would then have the workshop on the 3rd. And then on the 4th, the morning of the 4th, we would ride into Baxter and climb Katahdin. I had booked Katahdin Stream Campground within Baxter State Park for the nights of the 4th and the 5th. The 5th was kind of just in case. We might want a 0 day after Katahdin, because Katahdin was going to probably be intense, and we knew that. So we would leave Baxter State Park on either the 5th or the 6th, and then continue into the 100-mile wilderness. We'll get into this on Monday, but the flight change wasn't actually the last change in that plan, and the astute among you might have caught that when I'm looking back on my hike, I always say that it started on the 5th. So there is something coming. Next episode on Friday is going to be our first interview episode, and we're going to talk to my buddy Ratatouille. When he visited me back in February, we recorded this. We had a great time doing it, so I think you guys are going to have a great time with it as well, listening to it. It's going to be a little bit longer, as all the interview episodes are bound to be. I try to hold these content episodes to 20, 25 minutes. The interview episodes probably going to be closer to an hour. But the interview really brings out a whole different angle and everything too, because I'm bouncing off of somebody who had these similar experiences with me. So it's really cool. I can't wait for it. I hope you're excited about it too. So next time you'll be hearing from Muse and Ratatouille. Until then, this has been Muse, and you've been listening to Muse's AT Podcast. Thank you for walking with me, and happy trails.